like an organized science, you know, what I've called Orientalism. And it seemed to me that there was a kind of repertory of images that kept coming up, you know, the sensual woman who's there to be sort of used by the man. The East is a kind of mysterious place full of secrets and monsters. You know, the marvels of the East was a phrase that was used. And the more I looked, the more I saw that this was really quite consistent with itself. You know, it had very little to do with people who had actually been there. And even if they had been there, there wasn't much modification. In other words, you didn't get what you could call realistic representations of the Orient, either in literature or in painting or in music or any of the arts. And this extended even further into descriptions of the Arabs by experts, you know, people who had studied them. And I noticed that even in the 20th century, some of the same images that you found in the 19th century, amongst scholars like Edward William Lane, who wrote his book on the modern Egyptians in the early 1830s, and then you read somebody in the 1920s, and they're more or less saying the same thing. One great example that I always give is that the wonderful French poet Gérard de Nerval, who went on a voyage to the Orient, as he called it, and I was reading this book of his travels in Syria, and there was something very familiar about it. You know, it sounded like something else that I'd read. And then I realized that what he was doing almost unconsciously was quoting Lane on the Egyptians, on the theory that the Orientals are all the same, no matter where you find them. I mean, if it's in India or in Syria or in Egypt, it's basically the same essence. So there develops a kind of image of the timeless Orient, as if the Orient, unlike the West, doesn't develop. It stays the same. And that's one of the problems with Orientalism, is it creates an image outside of history, of something that is placid and still and, you know, eternal, which is simply contradicted by the facts of history. You see, so that's in that one sense, it's a creation of you might say an ideal other.